Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a Christmas card which is an entry for the current sketch challenge by My Favorite Things, which is already number 518. So for today I am going to use these amazing new stamps that I've got, and they are called Dashing Deer. I am going to do some no line coloring. And I'm also going to finally use some gem stickers that I have laying around here, and actually I'm too afraid to use it because I don't want them to run out. But that's all for today. So I'm now stamping out I'm smooshing my inks onto my acrylic block, and I already stamped out my images onto Strathmore Bristol Smooth using the antique linen distress ink, because today I'm going to do some no line coloring. I also stamped out a lot of these branches with the leaves, which I'm going to use to add some details to the card. I must admit the sketch isn't completely transferred to my card, but then again, I already told you in other videos, the sketch is a guideline, and it's definitely the idea, in my opinion, to sort of see where I got my design from for my card. But then again, in this sketch there is like a circle, and so far I don't have any dies that go that small in the shape of circles, but I'm planning on buying some basics, I think from Waffle Flowers, because they have like all the sizes in one package almost. So that's the plan. But for now I don't have a circle, so I did do the stripes that are on the sketch. I did do the angle, but I didn't do the circle. So I just made it my own, and I really like how it turned out. So that's important. I will normally I try to do that, but yeah, you never know if you're going to forget it. But I will link to the blog posts by My Favorite Things. You have one sketch challenge a week, so if you want to participate on this one and enter it, then you need to enter it at the latest Tuesday before a specific hour. So check that out if you are like thinking about it but maybe don't have an idea yet, that you are in time, but don't pressure you. It should be fun, of course, always. I'm also going to try to maybe make another one by using a stencil with the circle, but so far I don't have a clue yet. So maybe that's coming, maybe it isn't, but we will see. You can use stencils, you can use dies. For this one I would have liked a die, but yeah, so we don't have that. We just do it with the things we have, and it turned out quite right, I think. So for the coloring today I'm using a limited amount of distress inks. That's always handy to list up, of course, but it also creates a really soft feel, in my opinion. You can make gorgeous cards with a lot of color, but sometimes it's also distracting when you use a lot of colors. And when I'm doing no line coloring, I really like it to have like the attention be pointed out towards the images where you put all the effort in. I take much longer to color no line coloring than with Copic markers, so I just want that to shine. So both of theirs are having the same color, which is the brushed corduroy, and then I am using two greens that I will also use in my ink blending later on, which is also again colors that return, and yeah, I really like that idea, although I sometimes also go like crazy with colors because that's fun and bright. But for this card, it's also Christmas card. I just really wanted to have it clean and simple, as far as that's possible with no line coloring, of course. So I'm doing what I'm always doing, and as I'm always saying lately, try it. If you like it, just try it and get better in it and get more confident about yourself. this is how I do my no-line coloring. There are so many great artists that can really teach you something about painting. I don't know if this is a real technique that they would teach you, but this is what works for me. And the same can be for you. Like, maybe this works, maybe some completely other technique is also working for you. Then you should definitely try it out. And whatever you like, you should just continue with doing and getting better in it. Then just evolve and enjoy this great hobby. Okay, so what I do is I have Strathmore Bristle Smooth, which is a paper that can handle water, but in my opinion, too much water will also damage this paper. So I take my paintbrush, which is damp, and then I pick up the ink. So I mostly have ink on my paintbrush, not any watered down version or anything. Then I go to the edges where I want more shadow, more depth. I add the ink, and then I create a damp paintbrush and I just drag that color towards the rest of the image. And I just keep adding layers and layers. I don't add the layers immediately afterwards because, again, if you add a lot of layers, then the paper will take it as having a lot of water to process, which it can process water, but again, not that much all at once. So if you wait between your layers, let it dry, then come back, then normally it should be fine. Also, if you are blending and your blending isn't really working from the start, don't overwork it. Don't like keep brushing on it with your paintbrush. That will also sort of ruin your paper. It can also be that that's not the case, but if you are experiencing Strathmore Bristle Smooth that is dripping, it might be too much water, it might be processing your inks on there too much. So just try to limit it and just add layers and wiggle with the ink later on. That's what I would recommend. If you prefer using a lot of water, if you prefer having a really smooth painted version of the images, which I'm not going for with this technique, of course, then I would recommend using really a watercolor paper and just add water like a crazy person. Don't mind about it, just do it, and you will see that it will give you some sort of a smoother idea of paint. But that's my experience, of course, so I can only tell you what I know, but this is a technique that I like the effect. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Here for the scarf, I definitely first added it to the edges to stand out from the brown, and then here now I am adding my shadows a bit more, keeping it still soft in my opinion. Yeah, just because. Also, I am going to add to the inside of the ears, I will add a watered down version of the brushed corduroy. If you prefer it to be a pinkish color and you would like to know what I would use, then I would say Victorian Velvet. But as you can see here, my acrylic block was completely filled with colors, and you can call me lazy, because sometimes I really am. But I just thought, where should I be adding the Victorian Velvet? And then what you can do, or if you don't have any pink color, for example, you can just take a watered down version, like I'm doing here, and then you will also get an inside of an ear that is different from your image, but still you use the same color, and maybe nobody will know, except for you then, because I'm showing it here. But like, yeah. So I'm adding a bit more shadow onto my deers, and then I will go and continue with my leaves and the branches. And I must admit, I stamped out quite a lot. I don't like having to retake my Misty and stamp things out again. Also when coloring isn't working, sometimes I need to do that, and then there are other people who are really smart and they just ink up a second sheet of paper with all the images they are going to use just in case. and that's so clever, and I should be doing that as well. But for today I wasn't really sure how many branches I needed, so I think I was quite clever by just stamping a lot of them. I just filled up this paper and then I was going to color it. I have colored all the branches. And what I did, I used actually a combination of this crushed olive and peeled paint, and I went over the leaves, the stems, everything, and I added a second layer to each leaf just to give it a bit more dimension, a bit more shadow, and I really like how it turned out. I'm going to show you a few of these. They're all the same. The idea of the coloring is completely the same, and then the rest I will color off camera because it's the same. Yeah, sometimes we don't need to go really difficult. Here also the stems are really small. You will see in the end that I'm using some gem stickers on the reds. I did paint it red now, but if you have some difficulties with like the thin lines, I was lucky today and I had a quite sturdy hand. Not everywhere, but it was fine. But if you have difficulties with it, try maybe to stamp it out with some greens. What you have then is that you already have your stem in the color you want it to be, and if you will cover up the reds, as I am going to do later on, then actually you would also cover up the green outline of that red berry, or however it's called. So that can maybe help you. Also, if you feel that your hand isn't sturdy that day, or you're having difficulty that day, just stop with the painting. Like, lay it aside, your idea, you know what you want to do, and just come back on it, you know? It's also nicer for you. You know what you can do. You know where you want to grow in. There is just no point of trying to do really thin lines when it's not working that day, and you shouldn't be discouraged by that one day, or if you are having a lot of stress. Some people really feel it in their body. It can affect your coloring. Just don't mind about it. Lay it aside, come back to it when you're feeling better, when you are having sturdier hands, and just enjoy it again. There are days where I cannot do no line coloring. I really mean this. Some people think that I'm just doing this all the time. No, not at all. There are just days that I'm doing all wonky things. I also have it with the Copic coloring, where I just go outside of the lines all the time and it's just not working to do it in a clean and simple way. Yeah, with the Copic coloring you can sort of fix it with your colorless blender, which I use all the time. All the time. So, just saying. Onto my backgrounds. So I just trimmed out a sliver of perfect coloring paper this time. My Nina is running out. So I'm just trying to divide my use of papers a bit more. So that's why I'm using this one. Otherwise, I think I would have used Nina. But yeah, this worked as well. I am adding crushed olive, peeled paint, and forest moss to this background, and I just want a lovely gradient of green. And these two greens I also used on the images, you might remember. So then the forest moss, I think I haven't used it that much, but whoa, this one is really dark. And I went a bit heavy-handed in the beginning, so that meant that I had to continue with being heavy-handed to get like a nice gradient. Otherwise you would have some stripes and just splotches and things that we don't want to have. So I went back and forth quite a bit. So this piece is of course wider, but you need to remember that if you are going to add a piece like in a diagonal way, you need more. If it would be horizontal, then I could just have used a smaller piece, but with the diagonal idea of this sketch, it was just a better idea to have a complete strip, like all the way from the paper, and then just choose where I wanted to add it. So that's what I did. Then for my stripes on the edges of this piece, I'm using this gorgeous mirror card by Tonic Studios. This one is the gold pearl, yes, and it just fits perfectly with the green. I have another one that I prefer more from the mirror card, but then again, you need to watch the colors that you are using. So for my sentiments, I was first going to add it with a strip of paper. So I took my bullet journal, I have shown it I think already, and I decided on this color by Concord & Ninth, and I think it's Stardust called. In the end, I'm not using it. You probably saw that in the beginning. I am going to heat emboss my sentiment, but until the really final part of this video, I thought that I was still going to do it with a strip. So that's why I took my bullet journal and just watched which color would fit more with my ink blended background. So I'm first going to add this diagonally, and then it was time to check the placement of all my colored images. As you know, I didn't know how many of those branches I was going to need, so I had colored a lot, and it took me a while to die cut everything, but it was worth it. So for the branches, I wanted them to be on the top, actually more as some sort of a decoration, and I wanted them to be in all sort of angles, that yes, some going to the left, some going to the right, some just hanging there. So I had to fiddle with it quite a bit. And then for the gold strips, I could have added them on my ink blended piece, and then you would just make it smaller. But with laying out the images, I figured out that it was better to have it against my blended piece so that I had more room to work with, and it just fit better this way. So for the sentiments, I was laying it out. So I was going as the sketch is saying us, just do a bit diagonally on an angle, and then I could start fiddling with all the branches. And then I was so convinced that I had to leave this gold stripe there just to see, which is not necessary at all. You can definitely lift it up, and I will do it soon, but this clearly shows that sometimes I'm so inefficient. It's like, it's getting crazy. But yeah, so here I finally got it. I am laying out my branches as I want them to go, and then I will put a dot of liquid glue on them and just press my golden strip on top of it. And I thought this was genius. I will do that, and then I can just add a complete strip of foam tape on the back of this, how do you call it now? On the back of this strip with the branches on, and then my branches will be sort of floating, which is even cuter than I originally planned on. So I thought that was genius. Yes, we might differ on that opinion, but okay. I am now going to take the liquid glue because I really wanted to keep placement of these branches. And I'm just adding it on the end of the leaves, and you can already see that one of them will not be picked up, of course, because it was a bit further away. Yeah, but I am just going to add another dot of liquid glue a bit more towards the middle of the leaves, and then I can pick it up, and that is my strip. So I'm going to let it sit and dry on the side, and then I can, when that's dry, trim off the excess of the leaves. But here you can already see I am going to use these amazing Honeybee Stamps gem stickers. These are from the holiday tradition, but in the end I will wait for it until the complete end of my card to add those. but it works with the green, and that was the most important thing to check out. Here I'm using my paper trimmer, but something that I realized was because of the pressure that you put on the strip to keep it in place while trimming it, with this mirror card, it sort of comes through that you have those leaves on the back, and I didn't really like it. So later on I will add another gold strip on top of this one to limit the bulkiness. Yes. So everything is coming together and I'm really happy about it. I decided to use this big Momma foam tape roll by Simon Says Stamp to add on the back of the gold strips. Why? Because it's thinner than the other foam tapes that we know, or that I know. Maybe you know another one. But something that is less practical about these is that it's quite bendable. Because it's so thin, yeah, it's also really sticky, so it took me a while to get it perfectly. And when I cut them in half, the strip that I originally had from the foam tape, it was actually the second half was a bit too wide for the gold strip, so I had to trim another piece off there. And yeah, that just took me a bit. So here I have a lot of excess. I'm going again to take my paper trimmer. I don't trust myself with scissors, but I need to get over it because my paper trimmer is leaving an impression on the mirror card. And I like it too much to not use it, so I will have to do it with scissors in the future. And I will also do it in the end of this card with some scissors as well. So now for the bottom, I am also adding a big Momma foam tape by Simon Says Stamp. And once that's done, I'm going to add my images. So as you see here, I still haven't heat embossed anything. And so the idea was still to do it on the Stardust cardstock by Concord & Ninth, which is truly gorgeous. But it it didn't really fit with the gold. Yeah, don't know why, in my head it just didn't work anymore. With the green it works perfectly, with the gold, nah, not that much. So here I'm going to trim out a second strip of gold to add on the top of my strip that is on the top of my card. A lot of the same words in one sentence. Okay, why? Because as you can see here, even in the video, there is a lot of bulkiness and you can really see where I added the branches. I don't want that, so I'm just going to cover it. Adding some liquid glue on the back, and then I'm just placing it, making sure that the strip that is underneath it isn't showing, and then I can trim off the excess. That I will do with scissors, I think. I think I did it with scissors. And then I can add my images. Again, if you are going to heat emboss and you're doing something similar, then first heat emboss and then add everything. That's what I would do in normal cases. But here, I changed it up last minute, so. But it worked out fine, but I just, if I knew it, I wouldn't have risked anything, like maybe some glues that were coming off or just the bulkiness of the panel. It could all have been avoided. So I'm adding my adorable deers with some thin foam squares. Checking whether everything is still fitting. So here I was checking and wiggling whether my foam squares were placed correctly. I prefer adding as much as possible just to avoid getting just creased and stuff during mailing, but I needed to make sure that there wasn't any foam square where the strip is, of course, because there is already some dimension. So here I'm just quickly taking the scissors, cutting off the excess, and now I have my base, and then I had to add the sentiment. So the sentiment I am going to heat emboss, and therefore I'm using Versamark clear embossing ink. Here you can actually see that, in my opinion, it worked perfectly with green, but with the gold it wasn't working for me. Maybe instead of using gold I could also have used this color of cardstock on the edges, and then it would have been returning, but I didn't do that, so in the end I ended up just heat embossing it. For the heat embossing I always use Versamark clear embossing ink. It's the ink that I had since I started. I think it's now 3 years ago. I think 3 years ago, yes. So I got it then, and it's still working. I hadn't have the need like to fill it up again or re-ink it, so that's perfect. That's wonderful. Always lovely when your ink pads are just going along with you for a really long time. I have placed my card panel here on an angle to just have the option to use the grid on my Misty to see whether my sentiment was aligned straight. And I did this by lining it up with the gold stripes. And now I'm using my Versamark. I prefer stamping it out twice, just to be sure that the impression is good. And then I'm going to take my NUVO embossing powder, Glacier White. I was contemplating whether to use gold, because I used the gold stripes, but then my gold probably will not be exactly the same gold, so just to be safe I used the white, because you have the white outline from your images, and I didn't color the whole panel, so there is also white on the rest of my panel. So really quickly I heated everything, trying to avoid bulkiness, trying to avoid having some of my adhesives coming loose. And then I had one embossing powder thing that shifted during the heat embossing. I just lifted it up with my craft knife. If it's still a bit warm, then it's really easy to remove. Of course, when you have a lot to remove, probably you will see that in the end still. But okay, so here onto my gorgeous gem stickers. I have a few of these sets by Honeybee Stamps. They are also gorgeous, and all the rest that I don't have are on my wish list to get. So yeah, I love them. I thought in the beginning that I wanted to mix up the colors, but I wasn't like brave enough to use different colors on the same branch, for example. And then when I was close to finishing this, I actually preferred the lighter reds, so I just removed all the dark ones and changed them for the lighter ones. Not throwing away the darker ones, of course, I just placed them back on the sheet with the gems. And that's how I added some details to this card, and I'm so happy with the end result. You cannot imagine, like, these gems are laying around and they're waiting to be used, and I'm just too afraid to run out. After this card I only have 8 of those lighter reds left, so they are again in my basket to buy with my next purchase, because that's how I am. It's terrible, but you don't want to run out of gorgeous things. Like, also, what if I want to make another card like this with this red, then I don't have enough even to start? Like, that would be terrible. So next purchase, this one will be added. I like this. And then I just need to add this panel to a card base, and this Christmas card for the sketch challenge is finished. Okay, I had so much fun creating this card, really, and using these gem stickers made my day. So I hope that you like the addition of them, of course, because it's the first time that I'm showing them. So again, this is for the My Favorite Things sketch challenge. Every Wednesday there is a new sketch, so if you want to participate, be sure to enter before a particular hour on Tuesday. If you have any questions about this card, you can always leave it down below and I will get back to you as quick as possible. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for stopping by and I will see you back soon. Bye!